What's up, Patreon fam? This is your girl Megan from the Hood Astro Queen. And today I want you guys to take an astrological deep dive with me. Okay, as you may have seen in the title and as you can see in the picture here, like so, I want to talk about two dark-sided Capricorn mothers. And this is actually a long time coming. I've always had very mixed emotions when it comes to these two women. They've always rubbed me the wrong way, even before I really took a look at the astrology of it all. And as someone with a Capricorn mother myself who can bounce back and forth between the darker and the lighter side, they possess some energy signatures that I am very, very familiar with. And I thought it would be very interesting to, just break it down and really dig into it and talk about some of the effects and how dark-sided Capricorn mothers could really be damaging to their children. And I know you're probably thinking like, oh, damaging. One is Beyonce's mother and the other one is Toni Braxton's mother. What do you mean damaging? These are world-renowned superstars, especially Beyonce, for all of my Beehive members out there. Okay. I hope this doesn't trigger you too much, but the truth of the matter is, okay, these are two women who have a lot in common. Of course, they're both Capricorn women, but they both have two incredibly famous daughters. And one thing about Capricorn that everyone should really take note of is that because Capricorn is that sign that naturally rules the 10th house, right? And it is very closely interconnected with the idea of outward achievement and status and gratification, right? These are people, and just as parents, you tend to find a lot of Capricorn women who are very hard on their children, okay? And they expect a lot from their children, which in and of itself, no, is not a bad thing at all. However, the whole idea of dark-sided individuals or people who embody dark-sided qualities of any particular trait is that these are people who get completely wrapped up, consumed in this energy signature and carried away with it to the detriment of themselves, but more so specifically their children. And I would like to prove this case or make my point by diving into not only the natal charts of these two women, but also taking a deeper look into the synastry that these two women have with their most famous children. Because that's something else that is noteworthy. These women have multiple children, okay? Tina has Solange and Beyonce. Evelyn has 50,000 children, okay? However many of them there are. Yet, and still, I just find it very interesting that these are women who mostly doted on their more famous child. So, things that make you go, huh. So we're going to make this video into two parts. So this first part, I'm going to be diving into Miss Evelyn Braxton. So Evelyn Braxton was born January 14th, 1948 in Columbia, South Carolina. And this would actually make her a Capricorn sun, with her sun at the 22nd degree. And the first thing that stood out to me was the degree of her sun, as that number 22 can deal with a person who is extraordinarily controlling. And when attached to a sign like Capricorn, and of course your sun dealing with your children, this is a mother who rules with an iron fist. This could also create a person who sets very high expectation. They have very high hopes for their children, which, like I said, in and of itself is not a terrible trait. So that is one of the upsides to Capricorn women. A lot of them can be very worldly career women themselves. These are women who could be very big on having their own and setting their own accomplishments. And it's kind of like the gauge in which they measure themselves, right? How much have they achieved? But they can also push this on their children, which once again, in a healthy dose, right, could give children a sense of purpose. But once overdone, these moms can be brutal. They can be your quintessential or your stereotypical stage moms, or mothers who are just so hard on their children, critical of their children, who are constantly trying to force their children even into a career field or something that was predestined. That regardless as to whether or not the children want to go into those fields, these can be very overbearing mothers. And this is also reinforced given that Evelyn's sun is forming a sesqui square to her Mars at that 7th degree of Virgo, which can deal with her even being the type of mom to manage everything in her children's lives, like down to the day-to-day actions. Like, this is the mom who wants to know where you are, what she does not like surprises, who you're going to be there with, and the mom who may even take it upon herself to try to insert herself in your plan. Well, I'm going to help you do this. Well, let me help you do this. And she's overbearing. This aspect in and of itself can produce a super overbearing mother. And that could also create a mother who did not spare the rod. So I'm pretty sure she was whooping ass, especially with that Mars and Virgo. And Capricorn does deal with punishment. Now, also with her being a number 22, right? That sun at the 22nd degree, rather. This could even deal with her being someone who likes to capitalize off of other people. Which also kind of reinforces and compounds on that Capricorn energy. That dark-sided Capricorn energy can create a person who is just very, I would even say like sadistic, but that number 22 can create this element of almost like a exploitativeness to them. So these are people who could be very concerned with how they're going to benefit from certain people, places, or things. And once again, with the sun dealing with children, hey, dark-sided Capricorn moms can also be really mean. Okay, they can have a very, very mean streak. But because decorum and public image and persona means a lot to them, they often put up a front. So to the public, they may be viewed as a certain way, very regal, very classy women behind closed doors. These dark-sided moms can be just downright miserable and can force or push that misery onto their children. Now, is this necessarily Evelyn Braxton? I think so. I think it could be. And let's just continue the reading, shall we? I'll make my case. Her sun is also forming a quincunx to her Uranus in Gemini, which can deal with her being a spitfire, especially from a verbal standpoint. So this is even a mother who could not only have this tyrannical complex, especially with that Uranus element there, but these are mothers who might even mess around and curse their children out, or who could definitely pick them apart verbally, who could berate their children verbally. It could even point to where she likes to manipulate people, where she could like to be very manipulative of her children. Also, one of the big red flags that stood out to me was the fact that Evelyn Saturn, which is in Leo, is squaring her Scorpio South Node, which can make her too dependent on other people's money, particularly her children with that Saturn in Leo. It could deal with her using and leveraging her children to remain in control and on the receiving end of, once again, their money, but even just manipulating different situations to where she's always going to have the upper hand. It could even have sucked her husband dry. Okay, it could deal with her husband being a cheater, but I do feel like, especially with her son so negatively aspected, she could have been a person who exuded a lot of these qualities and pushed them onto her husband as well, which, it's not a popular thing, nor do I think it's appropriate to assume that a man cheats because of a woman, because we all know people do what they want to do, right? But I'm going to just keep it real with y'all. No wonder this motherfucker started cheating on her. Dark-sided Capricorn women are known, they're infamous for their attraction towards men of power, wealth, and status. And I do believe Toni Braxton's father was a really big preacher back in the day. And there's no doubt in my mind that that is a part of what attracted Evelyn Braxton to him. But then also with her son forming that quincunx to her Saturn in Leo, this deals with where not only does she have really fucked up karma with men, so the entire way in which her relationship unfolded was predestined in a lot of ways, but she also has a lot of fucked up karma with her children. And like I said, a lot of these even deal with where she could be overcompensating for an insecurity that she has, or where even if she feels powerless, she gets off on trying to almost be, I get dictator type of energy, control and micromanage other people. And once again, with it squaring her south node of Scorpio, Miss Braxton is very, very, very manipulative. Now, I know that there was a rumor, or it really wasn't even a rumor. It was more of an accusation. A person stepped forward who claimed to have known Tawanda Braxton and alleged that Tawanda was stealing Miss Evelyn Braxton's Social Security checks. Now, this Saturn in Leo squaring both of her nodes, that Scorpio South Node and Taurus North Node, can deal with her being snaked by a child as well. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And even that sun in quincunx to her Uranus and Gemini, where a child could be very manipulative in terms of finagling and finessing her government, which is that Capricorn sun, benefits or entitlements, which is that Uranus energy. So once again, something else to make you go, But her Saturn squaring that Scorpio South Node could even deal with where she could be jealous. She could harbor a lot of jealousy and resentment towards any one of her children. However, with that Saturn squaring the Taurus North Node, that could deal with where she favors one of her children at a level that's disproportionate to the others, which I don't even have to insinuate who that favorite is. I'm sure you guys know. And with that being said, I want to hop on over into the synastry between both Evelyn Braxton and Toni Braxton to further illustrate my point. Evelyn's Jupiter, is conjunct Toni Braxton's Mars, which is in Sagittarius, which deals with the family being very religious. And I do believe at a certain point, Evelyn was a preacher herself. So you could look at this aspect as Evelyn being very preachy, Evelyn putting a lot of her religious views and infusing a lot of those views into her children, or as she probably would even think, fortifying her children with this religious doctrine. Okay, this could also even deal with where they could have a certain religious or spiritual bond, her preaching to Toni. But also you could look at this aspect as putting all of her hopes and dreams into Toni Braxton. Evelyn's Neptune is also conjoined to Toni's Libra Sun, which is also worth mentioning because I did a Toni Braxton reading on my YouTube channel. So feel free to check that out after this if you care to, because it'll definitely help put this reading into context. But, with Evelyn's Neptune conjoined to Toni's Libra Sun, which is conjunct her South Node as well, this could deal with Toni either idealizing her mother and putting her mother on a pedestal, or vice versa, okay? But it can also point to where Evelyn is very deceptive to Toni. It could also create issues with honesty. It could also deal with Evelyn not telling Toni or the rest of her children the truth in regards to her marriage with their father, which is very interesting because, once again, this was a huge storyline and a huge issue that often came up just within the show, their reality show. I remember they went on Ayanna Van Zandt Fix My Life. And even throughout the seasons, they would talk about how their father cheated on their mother, ran off with another chick, and then got married. And the mother, Evelyn, was very bitter about it, which, she's a Capricorn. Capricorns can be very bitter. And it also doesn't help that she's a Scorpio South Node with that Saturn in Libra or Leo squaring her South Node, because it can make her someone where, when she's hurt, she can have an extremely difficult time getting over it, and she can just brew over and just stew in her own bitterness and hatred and resentment towards men. Okay? So that's not surprising, but once again, this configuration was just very interesting because it could point to where the mother, Evelyn, is not being 100% honest in regards to the details of their marriage. And like I said, my theory is that I feel like she did a lot of wrong within that marriage. Does it necessarily warrant cheating? Absolutely not. Did the father handle it the wrong way? Absolutely so. But I think there was something about what she did, who she was, and how she centered and purposed herself within that marriage that really made that man run for the hills. Because mind you, he's been married to his side chick ever since, okay? Ma'am, Evelyn, you were the problem. And even on the show, the father is very passive. And granted, we don't know the father. I don't have any of his information at my fingertips, but something's telling me between, the astrology components and just intuition that Evelyn is the common denominator. Evelyn is a problem. But nonetheless, her Neptune conjunct Tony's Libra Sun and South Node could even deal with where she is so tied and so invested in Tony Braxton to the point where Tony Braxton can lose her own sense of individuality, where there's no boundaries within that relationship. She has no boundaries between herself and her children, and Tony included. This could deal with her mooching off of Tony, enjoying the social circles that she's been able to be placed in as a result or a byproduct of Tony's success. This could also deal with her living vicariously through Tony. And it could point to where Tony is so devoted to her mother, but devoted to her mother to a fault. Okay, to the point where she could sacrifice herself, which is that Neptune energy, right? Sacrificing herself. It could be to her own detriment, where Evelyn could bleed Tony fucking dry. Evelyn's Chiron is also conjunct Tony's Neptune at that 22nd degree, hence the number 22, right? The control factor of Scorpio, which reinforces this theme of Evelyn being very manipulative towards Tony. It could deal with her taking advantage of Tony's impressionability. And like I said, with Tony being a Libra South Node, she has a lot of karmic debt to untangle by way of like other people and other people's expectations. She's supposed to find herself and assert herself, even if that means being the bad guy and saying no and pissing people off and dealing with conflict. These are people who may not naturally like conflict. And with Evelyn, she could absolutely give just that, conflict. And I don't know if you guys, once again, are regular viewers of the reality show, right, the Braxton Family Values, but the entire fucking family tiptoes around Evelyn like she's the big bad wolf. There's a huge difference between respecting your mother, right, because you came out of her pussy, and then being very fearful. And these are grown ass 40, 50-something-year-old women, almost fearful and timid, and they regress into this childlike state whenever their mother is around. Mommy, oh, that's my mommy. And I remember just watching like, what the fuck is going on here? Evelyn is also an Aquarius Moon, which can add another component and another layer to this sense of a person who can feel very entitled, somebody who can just naturally be very exploitive of people, especially when it's squaring Tony's Neptune, that Neptune in Scorpio once again. It could even deal with where Evelyn tends to objectify Tony's talents. Some of these aspects could also suggest that Evelyn is part of the reason why Tony experienced so many financial issues. You know, she could be, once again, addicted, as reflected in her natal chart, to other people's money. And very fixated on dealing with other people's money, and will do anything to kind of manipulate and leverage and retain that sense of power, right? But these aspects. And synastry could also point towards a mother who is almost like a burden to their children, like financially. And we all know Toni Braxton is not a stranger to financial problems. And I definitely think Evelyn has played a role in that. Evelyn's Chiron is also squaring Toni's Jupiter in Leo, which could also be another factor that deals with control, where she tries to restrict her freedom, maybe even her sexual expression from very early on, because that Jupiter in Leo could deal with Toni's younger years. And is it a coincidence that Toni recently came out and exclaimed that, I wish I was a hoe back in the day, back in my younger years? And I think religion could have been another tool that she implemented to mold and shape her kids into doing what the fuck she wanted them to do. Evelyn's Uranus in Gemini is also opposing Toni's Mars. Okay, that Mars in Sagittarius, which once again points towards that religious component. So it could deal with where she has mind control over Toni, where she once again acts as a dictator, controlling her every move, maybe even questioning her every move. And then once again, this theme of doing things to kind of mentally, right, and on a cognitive level, keep Toni where she wants her. So this concludes the first half to my dark-sided Capricorn mother series, perhaps, I guess you would like to call this. I want to know what you guys think. Okay, drop down in the comment section. Did you see this coming? Did you guys watch the Braxton Family Values? Can you relate to any of these placements? And do you know anyone who has any of these placements? Okay, were you raised by a dark-sided Capricorn mother? Please share and make sure you practice unconditional self-love so that you can love others. And until the next video, I holla.